Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. I have been looking forward to this moment for the longest time. I appreciate you all coming here to hang out with us. This means a lot to me because it's not often do we get a chance to talk to legend people who have done great things in this world and who are also leaving legacies for others to follow. I remember when I was in high school, I used to watch Michael Johnson compete, and I was so impressed. I wanted to be like him. He was always focused. And then I got the chance to go to college, and I got the chance to meet him the first time when he came to George Mason University, performed well at the mobile meet. And I saw something special in him. I saw something that I wanted to achieve and be just like him, because he was always so businesslike and so focused. So I'm happy that he took the time to be here with us this evening. And as usual, we're going to go deep into his mind to see what he knows that can help others to be just like him. But as usual, it's not about me, it's about our guest. Hey, hello, Mike. How are you, sir?
Good, Greg. How are you, man? Good to see you. It's been a
Yeah, man,
while.
good to see you too, man. Appreciate you stopping by. I never got the time to tell you thank you, Mike, for giving me the opportunity to train with you for so long. You changed my life in so many different ways. And I never got the time to say it, but I always wanted to say it to you, to say thank you for the opportunity to become the best version of myself.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you as well. Now it's great. Got some great years training together, pushing each other and to success. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate you and being there. And yeah, it was great. It was a great training partnership.
Well, it's custom on this platform, Mike, that before the actual interview starts, we give our guests an opportunity to send a shout out to whomever they please, or they may market anything that they choose. So it's your moment. Is there anyone you want to send a shout out to?
No, I'm here for you, man. I'm here for you and your guests. So let's jump into it, man.
All right. Well, before I jump into it, I just want the guests to know, the subscribers to know that I purchased the series, the Audible Defiance, and I didn't really know that you were so active behind the scenes in terms of some of the things that you wanted for athletes to achieve. And when I listened to your commentary, I was so impressed because I felt that we need more athletes like you who can stand up and let those who are coming appreciate those who came before us, because they set the trend that we all are benefiting from in so many different ways. Is there anything you want to say about Defiant?
Yeah, it was a joy and a real it was a real pleasure for me to have the opportunity to create the podcast Defiance on for Audible. This series was a real eye opener in many ways for me. It was a journey back through history and a real history lesson for me, and hearing the stories of those athletes who use their platform as a tool for change, who understood the as an athlete, as a sports person, the platform that they had and how they can make an impact on the world for good. And the sacrifices that those athletes made in using their platform was just an incredible, inspirational lesson for me. So it was a true pleasure to record the series, to interview the different athletes and their families and people who were close to those stories. Was really quite inspirational, and again, quite a history lesson for me. Many of those stories, I knew of them, and my viewers for the series as well. Some of those stories, they knew of those stories, but they didn't know the backstory. So like the Colin Kaepernick, of course, everyone knows that story, but most people don't know a lot of the backstory and sort of how that came to be. And And then there were some stories that people had never heard of before, of athletes who used their platform in protest and in defiance of the status quo. So it was a real pleasure for me, and very proud of the work we did on the series.
Well, I appreciate it. For those who need to know history, because I believe that history will make you a better person once you understand what others have sacrificed for you, then you will see the need to want to be the best version of yourself. So someday you too can offer up something that can help someone achieve their goal. But it is a pleasure, Mike, to have you on this platform, and I want to thank you for gracing us with your presence. For all the people who are watching this live now on this platform and who will watch it at a later date, Mike, please tell us, where in the United States were you born?
So I was born in Dallas. Grew up in Dallas. Spent most of my life there. Grew up there. Went out to Baylor. Still in Texas. Spent 4 years at university there, and then where we trained together. I trained there, but lived in Dallas throughout my entire career. And then moved to California after I retired from my career to San Francisco, to the Bay Area, but continued to keep my home in Texas as well, and back and forth. My businesses have all been based, most of them anyway, based in Texas, in the Dallas area. Now I live here in LA, in Malibu, and still spend quite a bit of time going back to Texas. And I'm traveling around the world, but I spent a lot of time in the UK as well. So a lot of travel, but Dallas, Texas is always home. Hard to take a Texas boy out of Texas. But I'm out of Texas, but still got that connection, right?
I know. If I'm not mistaken, Mike, you are the youngest of 5 children. Can you share with us what was life like growing up in Dallas, Texas?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 5. My 4 siblings are all, my 3 sisters and brother are all a bit older than me. So I was the youngest, and very close family. And I had my siblings to also help me along the way and sort of figure out life, which was very, very, very helpful for me. Grew up in Dallas, on the south side of Dallas. We didn't have a lot. I like to say, thanks to my parents, we had everything that we needed. We didn't have a lot of what we wanted, but they made sure we had what we needed. They made sure we had what we needed. And grew up in a really, mixed sort of neighborhood, mostly Black, but we had, Latino families in our neighborhood, white families in our neighborhood. And, this is in the 70s, early 80s. And we all got along. We spent a lot of time outside playing sports mostly.
Yeah.
And it was, during a time when, and certainly, we didn't have the funds to access anything other, any sort of organized sports. So we were always outside organizing our own sports, which was a really, really, rich experience, to be honest. So we were very fortunate that there was a school at the end of our street and a park. So I spent most of my days there playing. We had basketball courts there, soccer fields, football fields. And so we were always up there, playing sports as a bunch of kids who loved sports, and there were no video games. This is the 70s in a poor neighborhood. If there was a TV in the house, there was only one, and our parents were watching something we didn't want to be watching, so we didn't want to be in the house. So we were always outside playing, and no adults around. So we had to be athlete, coach, referee, and so learned a lot of lessons. I mean, like I was, we played a lot of basketball. I wasn't very good at basketball, still not very good at basketball. And so, of course, when it's your turn or whoever's ever turn, you got 2 people picking who they want on their teams. If you don't get picked because everybody knows you're not that good, what do? In those off days, after school or whatever, I take my basketball, go up to the court, shoot some baskets, get better, and so that I'll get picked. And that was a real rich experience for me in learning how to be better, without, somebody saying, oh, well, give Michael a chance, like you have in organized sports. I think the other thing that was really helpful with that experience as well is that, again, with no adults around, you know, you have to learn conflict resolution, as kids, because like I remember there would be days where, we're playing basketball and somebody says, "Oh, you fouled me." And the other person's like, "No, I didn't foul you." And then, ultimately we got to get back to playing. So we got to figure out, well, who fouled who, or who's going to take and say, "Yeah, I fouled," or whatever, so we can get back to playing, as opposed to an adult being able to be there and
Yeah.
organize everything for us.
Yeah. We need to go back into those days, because I think that these younger generation, they have been robbed of true fun, and as you say, even the conflict resolution is a major issue right now, even with adults, because if you don't get those lessons early, chances are as you get older, you may never even know how to resolve conflicts. One other thing I find, Mike, is that for us to be inspired, sometimes it's something bigger than us that we have to focus on. Was there any specific person or event that inspired you to start participating in track and field?
No, it was really just loving to play sports. So I played all sports when I was a kid growing up. I played basketball, baseball, football, ran track. So I did all of those different sports, because I just loved competing and loved sports. And through that, then I found my true love, which was track and sprinting, and what I was really good at. So that's how I found it. And you talked about kids having fun with sport. I was out there not because I was inspired by someone else or inspired by any particular thing. I was out there playing because I just loved it. It was fun. I loved to play sports. It was fun for me, and I was in the moment. I wasn't, when I was a kid running track, I just wanted to win the races. I wasn't thinking, I'm out here because I want to someday go to the Olympics, or I wasn't out here because, I've been told I could make a lot of money and get my family out of poverty. It was none of that. It was just out there having a good time, playing the sports and wanting to win.
I'm going to ask you one more childhood question. Were you a quiet child, or were you super active, getting into everything?
Well, I was a little bit of both. So I was definitely getting into everything, very active as a kid, but I was also very shy as a kid. As I got, sort of, in my early teen years and sort of things like I was kind of shy as a kid, but I loved competing. I loved, and so even though, and I think that that's where I found myself, was in sports, because even though I was a little bit shy and maybe a little bit quieter outside of sports, when I got into sports, I think, it was funny because like, kids they would see a different side of me because I was a trash talker. So I would, so even though I was kind of quiet on the one hand, I was a trash talker when we played sports, and yeah, so it was different for me. I think that's where I found my voice. That's where I found my confidence, through sports.
One of the things I see with the young kids today, Mike, is that there is a certain level of pressure. You were able to do your thing in a quiet way, but as a young boy, it is said that your coach, Joel Eza, gave you some good advice regarding track and field, which was to relax and try to enjoy running. We don't see that today. We see younger athletes are under pressure trying to be superstars at an early age. He didn't put you under any pressure. How important was that to you, and how helpful was that to you?
Well, certainly, when kids are under pressure, it can take away the fun. It can rob them of the fun of the experience of play, and really even understanding if they really enjoy the sport or not. So I think it was instrumental in my development and ability to develop slowly and really enjoy the sport. That I wasn't, under pressure from my coach, but also my parents as well, because that's where a lot of the pressure comes from. A lot of times, especially today with kids being in organized sports, is the pressure from parents. But also, I think that kids today are under a tremendous amount of pressure that doesn't always necessarily come from a coach or a parent or somewhere else. They're just under a lot of pressure just from society, their own social media. And look, I mean, Greg, we have to be very careful. I mean, I don't know about you, but me, I'm not that person that's always like, hey, when we grew up, it was better. Everything that we did was better. And today everything is messed up. I mean, that's not, I mean, look, I wish we had social media because it's an amazing tool. So I don't criticize athletes for using social media.
Yeah.
Social media is an amazing tool if it's used correctly. So, you know, and it's not going away. So the idea of saying to kids, you know, don't be on social media, you're an idiot if you think you're going to get anywhere with that. So the thing is, you know, these kids are under a tremendous amount of pressure. That pressure is not going to go away. So it's a matter of helping these young people understand how to manage the pressure, how to protect themselves from the pressure that's out there that they're going to experience no matter what. That's just the nature of life today with media, new media, social media, with all of the things that are required of them, and just the way that we're living our lives today, which is dramatically different from how it was when I was coming up, growing up here in the inner city in a much more simple time, and probably how you were growing up as well.
And that makes sense. I think we need more parents who understand that, you know, spending time on teaching the kids, especially athletes who are under that influence of outside forces, to know how to make better decisions. So I certainly agree with that perspective. I have been searching the internet, Mike, but I'm not able to find a lot of information on your track career as a young boy. Is it said that you attended Skyline High School in Dallas? Please share with us. How competitive were you in high school, and what are some of the events that you participated in?
Yeah, so as I said before, you know, for me it was, so the reason why you don't find a lot of information on me about my high school career is because I wasn't one of those athletes who, you know, as you mentioned before, who was under a lot of pressure, who was, you know, sort of picked as, oh, this person is one of the, you know, he could be the world record holder. So now we're going to take him and put him over here and spotlight him, and, you know, and start to talk about, you know, what kind of times he can be running in 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, or whatever. I was just out there having fun. Nobody had their eye on me, you know, sort of. The school that I went to, Skyline High School, was a magnet school that, you know, was for kids who, you know, it was sort of a school for kids who were supposedly a little bit gifted intellectually. I don't know how I got in, but somehow I got in. And you know how it is, especially back then, given the fact that we were a magnet school with kids that, you know, you had to apply and get in. Only certain kids would get in based on your, you know, your grades and how you tested. So our sports weren't very good because, you know, especially back then, you know, it was always like, oh, the smart kids aren't very good at sports.
True.
So we were not very good at sports in our school. Sports was not prioritized. And so, and maybe a situation would have been different had I gone to another school, the school in my neighborhood, in my district that I was supposed to go to, like my brother and sisters went to. Maybe things would have been different. And maybe in that situation, as you mentioned before about my coach, maybe I would have been under a little bit more pressure. Maybe that coach would have said, hey, you know, we prioritize sports here, and this guy's got speed, he's got talent. We're going to really try to, you know, accelerate that. But at my school, since sports wasn't really prioritized then, which is funny because now it's one of the best sports schools in Dallas, but back then it was not. And so sports wasn't prioritized. And so my coach was just, you know, hey, sport is truly an extracurricular activity, you know, absolutely secondary to the academics. And so there wasn't any pressure. So my track career wasn't anything stellar when I was in high school, but I started to run pretty fast, and we weren't really training. The coaches didn't really. My coach was a great man. His self-proclaimed. My coach said, you know, he was not a great track coach, and he wasn't. He was a pretty good football coach who just volunteered to be the track coach. And in fact, the only reason why colleges started to recruit me was because my high school coach, Coach Joel Izar, sat down and wrote letters to all of these college coaches and was saying, hey, look, this kid is doing this all on his own because I am not a track coach. So everything that you see that he's doing has nothing to do with me. So which was, and he was just explaining to them that I had amazing upside, and that's why coaches started to recruit me. So there isn't a lot about my high school career. I did get second at state at the Texas State meet my senior year. And again, I can remember I told you we weren't very good at sports at my school, but we were in the toughest district in the country for track and field. Our district within our little area of Dallas was the toughest district for track and field in the entire United States. We have people. Remember Roy Martin?
Yes.
Roy Martin made the Olympic team, the U.S. Olympic team in 1984 as a junior in high school, as an 11th grader. I had to run against him every week. He still holds the world record, I believe, for the 200 meters for 18 years old. And then, I lost the state track meet. I got second to Derek Florence, who ran at Texas A&M, who you probably remember. Mm-hmm. Derek Florence is still the world record holder for the 100 meters for a high school kid for that age. So the guys I had to run against were the best in the world.
Well, I think the secret to what you're saying, Mike, because it's similar to me, because I didn't run until it was my last year in high school. So my body got the chance to rest. My mind was kind of fresh. I had the determination. And it was fun for me to just go out there and do. And I think that's the key point that you're trying to make, that when you put these young athletes under pressure, chances are as they get older, they may dislike what they do. As a youth, it seemed that you were well-grounded. As the youngest in the family, I assume that a lot of discipline was instilled early. You seem focused and to be a responsible young man. And I think because of that, Coach Clyde Hart gave you a scholarship to attend Baylor University. It is said that he admired your maturity level and thought that you would offer good leadership to the team. How was your transition from high school to college?
It was eye-opening because, as I said to you before, Greg, I had never really trained. I mean, my high school track coach would come out like a week before the first track meet of the season and say, "Okay, who's running track?" and then we would start practicing. So, I had never gotten into any sort of off-season training program or any of that. So when I got to Baylor and the training was like, my body was not ready for that sort of training at all. I mean, it was rough, man, the first few weeks, but I could tell that this is where I needed to be. This is what I needed to be doing, and that it was going to make me better. And so it was a little rough at the beginning, but in my first year, I mean, I made huge improvements, and I mean, it was dramatic, and it was exactly what my high school coach had said to me and to all of these coaches, that, hey, your potential, because I was running fast in high school with no training. I had never trained. So when I got to Baylor, I started to realize that potential very, very quickly. And it was dramatic. It was a dramatic change, but it felt like exactly what I needed. And I was very fortunate, Greg, that it happened at that time. Yes. So because it was a really good time for me, to then get into, okay, now it's time for serious training. And now it's time for me to start, feeling the pressure of, okay, I have this potential. But now I have to try to realize this potential by putting in the work and learning how to compete, how to perform at a high level and deliver great performances, against some of the best in the world. I was mature enough as an individual at that point to be able to balance that pressure, to be able to embrace that pressure, and be able to use it to be better and to get what I really want. And I was mature enough to know what I want. Now, I have to say, before we jump into, and kids today, they don't know that, or, again, we can't do that because it just doesn't work. The thing is you're not, I mean, I've been in the sports performance business, for a very long time now. We train professional athletes, youth athletes, and consult with sports teams and things like that. And sports is such an important and such a, huge part of people's lives, that you're not going to convince parents to not put their kids in specialized select sports teams. They're going to do it. So the idea that, no, that's not good for you and you should just let your kid, have fun and, progress, slowly, like Michael, they're not going to do it. You're wasting time. So the idea is, so while that worked for me, we can't say, well, that's what everyone else needs to do now, because they're just not going to do it. There's too much of a draw. There's too much of a, sort of desire to get your kid working faster, earlier, working more to see what that potential is and to realize that potential quicker. And you probably have to. I mean, I don't know if I would have actually, I don't know if what, the process that I went through, I don't know if that would work today, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, if I'm not running fast by, sort of 10th, 11th grade, in high school, there may not be any scholarship for me. So I think that, we have to just be careful. It was a work for me, but I'm the last one to say, oh, and that's how everyone else should do it.
I understand. I understand that view as well. And it is something that I think we should all assess and then make the decision as we go along. In your case, you had the foundation in terms of the discipline and so on. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't something that you desired, then it didn't matter how hard someone would push you, you still wouldn't do it. You would say that you started to achieve a lot when you went to Baylor within your first year. And the evidence is clear because you actually set the Baylor record with a 20.41 on your first outing. Did you find it challenging to find new gears on the collegiate scene where you had greater competition, or did it come naturally to rise to the occasion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's the benefit of, being able to get to that next level where the competition was, was stiff. I mean, there was some great athletes that I was competing against. And so, as you said, setting the Baylor record in my first meet, 20.41, it was fast, but it wasn't fast enough to be the Southwest Conference back when there was a Southwest Conference. It wasn't fast enough to be the Southwest Conference champion. It wasn't fast enough to be the NCAA champion. In order to do those things, which I ultimately did, I had to run faster. So if you fast forward to my next year, my sophomore year, I'm running against Joe DeLoach, who became the Olympic champion in 1988, Floyd Hurd, who was ranked number 1 in the world, and I'm running against those guys. And so then I dropped down to 20.07 as a personal best in my sophomore year, and I ran 20.07 and got second at the Southwest Conference Championships to Joe DeLoach. So that's the sort of, then, that's fast. And I'm I never dreamed in high school of running 20.07 as a 200 meter runner. But after running that and then knowing that, okay, that wasn't my best race, I made some mistakes in that race and I can run even faster, and I need to run fast because I want to win, and I didn't win that race. So that makes you raise your game and you continue to raise your game. So absolutely, Greg, that sort of competition that you get in the U.S. collegiate system is certainly a motivator, and you need to rise to the occasion. And those that do ultimately go on to have pretty good success.
Great, interesting. I'm sure your mind had to be in the right place to be going up against those guys week in, week out in order to be successful. And as you said, this is something that you desire more than anything else. Can you share with us, though, the process it took on your journey, say coming back from injuries, competing against those guys and still dominating the conference and the NCAA and even setting records? What was the process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, Greg, I had so many injuries, so that was a huge problem for me throughout my 4 years, or my first 3 years anyway, as a collegiate athlete. So I was injured every one of the first 3 years of my career. And usually the injuries came toward the end of the season when it was championship time. So winning, conference championships, NCAA championships, I had the times, I was running the times early in the season to win those races. But I was injured at the end of the season, so I didn't. And that was a problem. And so I had struggled with injuries for 3 years, but at the same time, showing amazing potential, running, some of the fastest times, not only in the collegiate scene, but during different times of the year, running some of the fastest times in the world. So, I knew, my coach knew, we all knew the potential was there. And the only thing that was holding me back was trying to stay healthy. So I learned pretty early in my career that, you have to look in the mirror first and figure out, is there something that you can do? And so, it was an interesting situation, probably one of the most impactful, for me in my relationship with Clyde, who you know well and coached you as well. So there was so going into my senior year, I called him and told him I wanted to come up to his office and have a meeting. And so I came up and I said, Coach, I'm really concerned. Like, I've got this potential. I want this career as a professional athlete, but these injuries, we got to figure this out, because if I can't stop getting injured, I'm not gonna have the career that I want. And this is my last year. This is my senior year. It's really my last year. If I don't get it done this year and get through and realize this potential and eliminate these injuries, it's not going to happen. And so coach said, Michael, I believe in you. I believe in your talent. I'll do everything I can as your coach to try to figure this out. He said, let me think about it. He's like, why don't you think about it as well? Come back in a couple of days. Let's meet again and see what we come up with. See how we can figure this injury thing out. I said, okay, coach. So I'm walking around, I'm leaving his office, and he says, hey, Michael. And I said, yeah. He says, hey, also, he said, why don't we think about not just what we can do, but let's think about anything that we haven't already been doing that might help us with these injuries. I said, okay, coach. I walk out. As soon as I got in my car, I thought about what he said, and I knew exactly what he was doing. And coach, how he is. I mean, he's one of the greatest coaches ever, because he understands how to meet a person where they are. And he knew with me, like, I'm very confident. I can be a little bit stubborn. And he knew that I have to let Michael figure this out for himself. So what he was saying when he said, let's think about some of the things we haven't been doing, I had not been stretching like I needed to. I hated stretching. And I had not been actually committing myself in the weight room. I hated strength training. I loved to run. I was on the track. This. I'm at the track early for running. I'm there early. Strength training, going to the weight room, I might be a little late because I hated it. And so for 3 years, he had been telling me, Michael, you got to do better. I know you love running. You got to commit to your strength training just as much. And I just didn't like it. So I wasn't as committed to it. And I realized that that's what he was talking about. And because I had spent 3 years trying my hardest to become the first person to be world-class as a sprinter without stretching and strength training. And the result was 3 years of injury. And so I realized that, I'm going to have to commit to these things just as much. It wasn't that I wasn't doing it, but I wasn't putting the same effort and commitment and focus into those things that I was when it was, okay, time to get on the track and run, because that I love to do, always did. So I made that commitment. And when I did, the result was, 1990, finished my collegiate career, NCAA champion, no injuries, and rolled right into my professional career, and ended that year, that summer, as the first person in history ever to be ranked number 1 in the world in the 200 meters and 400 meters. Mm-hmm. So that was an incredible lesson for me. And what it taught me, and I carried throughout the rest of my career and now through the rest of my life, is that, look, the fundamentals of anything that you're trying to do, the fundamentals, are, it takes what it takes. A good friend of mine always said that it takes what it takes. You don't have any options. If you want to be world class, if you want to be the best at whatever it is, there are some fundamentals that are required. In the case of being a great sprinter, yes, it's running, it's stretching and flexibility, it's taking care of your body, it's strength training, it's all of those things. And you can't pick and choose which ones you're going to focus on more. You can't pick and choose, well, I'm going to do this one. I'm really committed to the things that I like to do, but not necessarily as committed to the things that I don't like to do. That doesn't work. And I realized that early on. Thankfully, I realized it early.
You still have people today think that they're going to do what you tried to do and that they will be victorious in not stretching and not spending quality time in the weight room. And I can understand why you were afraid of the weight room to some degree, because when we started lifting together, I was like, man, I don't want to come because we were doing different types of exercise. Like, I'm saying, where did they think of these things? All parts of your body was hurting.
Yeah,
So I can understand it.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's different things, Greg, for different people. You know, for me, it was strength training that I didn't like, and and stretching and flexibility that I wasn't focused on. For someone else, it may be something else. They may love being in the weight room. You know, for some athletes, it may be, you know, we have athletes all of the time that come to us, and you know, some of them it's diet. You know, like, oh, and we work with athletes around the globe, and you'll have them saying, you know, oh, you know, in our culture, you know, we do this or we do that, or we don't diet this way. That. Okay, you don't have to, but the medals really don't care about your culture. The medals really didn't care about whether I like stretching or not. You know, in order to get there, the fundamentals, it takes what it takes, and you have to. The sooner you realize that. And like you said, some athletes, you know, don't recognize that. Eventually they will. And I tell athletes this all of the time. You're going to learn that lesson, that the fundamentals are there and it takes what it takes. And you're going to have to do it if you want to be successful. You will learn it either earlier or you will learn it later. Hopefully you learn it earlier.
Yeah. Perfect way to segue into this question, because it is often said that transitioning from the amateur to the professional is no walk in the park. Because this is where a lot of the athletes fail to transition successfully to the next level. The coach must be right, the environment must be right, also the structure of the camp and funding must be right. How was your transition into the pros? Did you find it easy, or did you find it rougher than you thought it would be? And also, generally speaking, can you give younger athletes tips on how to cope with such as these gruesome transitioning from amateur into the professionals?
Yeah, so my transition, Greg, was probably different than most, and so maybe not the best example, to be honest, from a transition standpoint, because my transition was much more, in my entire career, was much more akin to any professional athlete. So you think of a football player or a basketball player. How do they transition from college to professional? They get drafted. They've shown enough promise, and they've shown so much promise and so much potential in college that they get drafted with a huge contract into the NFL or into the NBA. There ain't going to be much struggle from that standpoint. I was the same. That was my situation. I ran so fast in college that, you know, my transition was easy. I pretty much got drafted, if you will, signing a significant contract with Nike immediately once I transitioned into my professional career. And then, of course, you know, running meets and having, you know, a significant financial appearance fee to show at those meets. So in that way, it becomes a lot easier because you now have, you know, just like in college where you have access to coaches and medical physios and all of the things that you need in order to take care of your body, in order to get to competitions, or with the support that you need and deliver a performance. I had the ability to have all of those things. A lot of athletes in track and field don't have that because the sport is somewhat professional, but somewhat still amateur. So a lot of athletes still struggle once they've left the collegiate scene, and they're professional, but the money is very minuscule for most of those athletes. So now that now you have to pay for, in addition to all of your normal living expenses, which were being paid for and taken care of when you're in college, now you have to pay for coaches. You have to pay for travel. You have to pay for physio and medical and all of those things. So it becomes very, very difficult. So my situation was a little different. I think that, with most of the athletes, assuming that they do have the financial resources, they've gotten a good sized or decent contract, when they've transitioned as a track athlete. Assuming that is the case, then the most difficult part of the transition then is sort of you as a track athlete. It's very different than team sports. It's very different than when you were as a track athlete as a part of a team at a college, where you have to decide, how many races am I going to run this year? Who's going to be my coach? Who's going to be my agent? And getting some support from those people. But there are a lot of decisions that at the end of the day, they fall on you. And of course, as we know, success or failure in most cases comes down to, well, what was the quality of the decisions that you made? So that becomes a huge part of the transition for a lot of athletes, because unlike when I transitioned as a track athlete and I had to make all of those decisions, and again, my situation was a lot more like a real professional athlete, but I had to hire a coach, hire a strength coach, hire an agent, hire an assistant, hire a physio. All of these people work for me. I had to coordinate them. I had to make sure that, knowing what my goals were, that they were all aligned with my goals and helping to get me there, as opposed to a situation where, a professional athlete, like one of my best friend, when I was competing, he was an NFL player, and he didn't have to make those decisions. We're both professional athletes, but I have to make these decisions. The team makes all of those decisions for him, so it's much easier. So that can be a real difficult transition for track athletes.
I want you to elaborate a little bit more, Mike, because one of the things I find a major issue for track athletes, that they are not involved at all in the decision making. They leave it to somebody else, and it is one of the biggest mistakes they can make. How involved were you in terms of hiring? And you said something, everybody else, the agent, they work for you, but it seems today like the athletes are working for the agents and the coach and everything else. Could you expound a little bit on your own experience in terms of your decisions and how you took charge of your own life?
Yeah, so yeah, I would have to agree with you a little bit, Greg. I mean, these athletes today, it's there was a time where that was the case. So yeah, there was a time, certainly when I was competing, there was a lot of athletes who they, were at the mercy of the decisions of the agents, and the agents sort of control their career, and which is not the way to go. You certainly should, be making your own decisions or be involved in those decisions. And I was, and my position was, yes, that these agents, my agent, my manager, you work for me. That was my position. But there was, so you're right, Greg, there was a time, but it has changed dramatically as of late. It is no longer the case that these athletes, feel like they work for the agent. They control the agent. The problem now is that the athlete is telling the agent what to do and not listening to the advice of the agent. So the right balance there is, okay, I am the athlete. Yes, you work for me and I should be involved in those decisions, but I should also, the reason I hired you is because you supposedly have the expertise that's going to help me make the right decisions.
Makes sense.
But the athletes today, that era that you were talking about, yeah, Greg, I mean, it's gone, that whole era of, athletes just kind of blindly like following whatever the agent tells me. No, they're telling the agent now. But the problem is, and the agents will not push back and say, well, I'm not sure that's the decision you really want to make. They're afraid that they'll get fired if they don't agree, because the athlete is on social media and they have their followers, and the followers tell them everything they want to hear. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah, that's what you should do. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. But then the agent's saying, no, that's probably not right. And they're like, no, that's what I want to do. So you work for me, go get it done. And the agent is afraid, well, I'll get fired if I don't do what my athlete is telling me to do. So it's a little bit different now. Oh. My situation was, I did hire people that I felt like I had the expertise that I needed to help me make the best decisions. But at the end of the day, it was my decision to make. I was involved, but I did listen to their advice and their counsel. And in some cases, I would say, "Yep, that makes sense. Sounds good to me. Let's do what you're advising me to do." And sometimes I would say, "I hear what you're saying. Yeah, makes sense, but I don't think that's the way I want to go. I'm going to go this way, so we're going to do it this way."
You know, Mike, I have to make this known because you take pride in the balance in everything, whether it's academics and track and field and everything else. The balance is absolutely important. In 1999, the same year, you earned a bachelor degree in accounting and marketing. For people who don't understand Baylor, it's a very rigorous road to travel when you go in that route. Yet still, that same year, you earned a title as the top ranked runner in both the 200 meter and the 400 meter. So that's a lot of work. And you were the first man to ever hold that dual top ranking for the two events. So for that, I want to take my hats off to you. But what level of discipline, focus, and commitment did it take for you to achieve these accomplishments in the same year? And what were some of the challenges you overcame while doing so?
Yeah, so I mean, I went to university to get a degree. I was a student athlete. I mean, that was what I was there for. Again, and fortunately, when you're part of a university setting, you have all of the resources you need in order to do what you need to do. You don't have to be worried. So I got my degree in 1990. I think you said 1999, but it was 1990 when that was my senior year at Baylor, and I finished my degree in marketing. And so for that 4 years that I was there, I had everything that I possibly could need in order to, I got tutors, at my disposal. Housing is being taken care of. Meals are being taken care of because I'm on scholarship. Coaches, medical, got everything that I need. That's why the, student athlete situation is so valuable to so many athletes and allows you to be able to, go out there and, pursue and try to improve enough to be able to be entitled to an actual professional career, but also to earn a degree. And I mean, so many athletes, especially in track, you look at most sports across the NCAA landscape, and most track athletes do graduate, which is that's so. I only say that to say that, I'm not special by the fact that I got a degree and actually, and ended up in a professional track career, because most track athletes do actually take advantage of that 4 years that they're there and get a degree, and take advantage of that situation, thankfully, because it would be a shame if you're there for that 4 years and you end up without a professional career and also without a degree.
All right, makes sense. Makes sense. In 1991, Mike, at the World Championship in Tokyo, you earned your first world title, winning the 200 meter in an unusual margin of victory by 0.33 seconds over Frankie Frederick, who was always competitive. What was the process like preparing for a championship, and what did it mean to you earning your first world title?
Yeah, so just in the essence, just in the interest of time, Greg, I'm going to go through these championships and through sort of my professional careers because I know that we don't have a lot of time. So I'm gonna so 91 was my first world championships, and fortunately I had already had one professional season under my belt in 1990, so I had finished that year ranked number 1 in the world. 91 was my opportunity to win my first world championship. I was in some of the best, to that point, best shape of my life. And so I was absolutely just ready and hungry, to be a world champion. And so took advantage of that opportunity, was able to win that world championship. Interestingly, as a 200, 400 meter sprinter at that time, every championship, world championships, Olympics, I had to choose one of them. And so I chose the 200 meters. 1992, I chose the 200 meters again. But 93, now I'm already world champion at 200. I decided, well, I'm going to switch and choose the 400. So I became world champion in 1993 in the 400. It wasn't until 1995 that I got the opportunity to actually double up in the 200 and 400. And that was based on because I was tired of having to choose. I didn't want to choose. It was painful for me in 1991 after winning the 200 to sit there in the stands watching Antonio Pettigrew win the 400 meters, where I'm like, I could win that race. I should be down there, but I had to choose because the schedule wouldn't allow me to double. And then vice versa. In 1993, I'm sitting there in the stands watching Frankie win the 200 after I won the 400. I'm like, I should be winning that race. And so I had to appeal to the sports governing bodies to change the schedules and sort of separate the two events so I could double. And so in 95, I got that chance and won the world championship in both. And of course, 96 home Olympics, as well. And 97 went back to the 400 and, the rest is history. 99, 400. And of course, in 2000, with somebody, pushing me to the finish line, I was able to round it out and win another 400. But, throughout my career, Greg, the thing that I'm most proud of is that with all of those races, that each one is special for its own reason. But each one, was a goal that I had set, and I was able to accomplish the goal. So certainly proud of all of them.
Okay, I have a few more questions. I'll let you go. Do you attribute some of your success based on how you were raised? Because we see a certain level of discipline with you, Mike, that we don't often see with athletes in terms of the level of dedication and commitment and focus. Would you attribute that to the way you were raised?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that it certainly was a huge part of my development. But as I told you, Greg, so I was certainly disciplined as an athlete throughout my professional career, doing everything that it takes to be successful. But part of it was drive. I wanted it, So it doesn't matter, how much my dad instilled a lot in me that I value, the value of hard work that he taught me. But, that in itself would not be enough if I didn't want it, and I wanted it. And that's what helped. So it's the combination of those two things. So yes, the seed was planted in terms of discipline, because I knew how to be disciplined because I was taught that by my dad, and he demanded that from me. So that was there. But it was the desire in what I wanted that allowed me to then get to where I was and be able to take those things. Because think about it. Remember, college, wasn't really that disciplined when it came to weightlifting. So regardless of what my dad taught me about discipline, how to be disciplined, once I was out on my own, making my own choices, and I'm choosing, to be really focused and committed to this, but not this. But I wanted it so bad that I realized that I'm going to have to be committed and disciplined over here too. And because of the structure, to your point, that my parents taught me, my dad, my mom, how to be disciplined, it was something that, that was already there. But I think the most important part, for me, Greg, in terms of what I can attribute, my success as an athlete, my success as an entrepreneur, as a television pundit, and all of the things that I've been able to do in my life is that, remember I talked about, the decisions you make in life. My parents taught me how to make good decisions. They taught me how to, really assess things and understand, how you assess things and make good decisions. They taught me that. And I think that there's probably nothing that has been more valuable in my life than that lesson and what they taught me there.
I have one last question and then I'll let you go, Mike. Is there anything you would like to say to the younger generation that could motivate them to be more disciplined, to be more focused, to be more committed, while seeking longevity in the sport? Because when we look at you, we have never seen another person who had that level of longevity like you. So there must be something that you look at, you thought about, you feel, you know. Is there anything you would like to say to this younger generation that can help them to have longevity and still achieve high level of success at the same time?
Yeah, I think, it's understanding that this sport is really difficult. It's a very difficult sport, and consistency is key. And I was just tweeted the other day about watching the U.S. championships and all of the championships, Jamaican championships, British championships, were all this past weekend, and I think, and I can notice that a lot of the athletes and their coaches are focused on running fast. And there's a time to be focused on running fast in your career. And there's a time to be focused on then running consistently. If you've already demonstrated that you can run fast, you need to now be focused. If you haven't gotten there yet, then absolutely focus on running faster. But if you're already running fast, if you're a 100-meter sprinter, you're already running 9.8. Now you need to get consistent running 9.8, because it's not going to do you any good to run 9.8 at, the Prefontaine meet or at the Paris Diamond League, but then run 10 flat at your championships, or then run a 10 flat in the semifinals at the Olympic Games and get ousted and not even be able, and then somebody wins it in 9.8, which happens all of the time, because there isn't that focus on, well, how do I get consistent? So my advice to athletes, in terms of, to answer your question about longevity, the longevity comes when you learn how to consistently deliver those high quality performances every race. That would be my advice. The only other thing I would say, what was probably most instrumental for me in terms of, beyond the things I talked about, like making decisions and that sort of thing, but in my career, was understanding how to get the best from myself. Mm-hmm. And understanding yourself as an athlete. And as you know, Greg, you would, when we would come to practice, one of my things was always like, I need it the same every day. I don't want to be, I want it the same every day. Consistency in practice breeds consistency. I know that about myself. That's where my confidence comes from, knowing that, okay, we're doing the same thing here. We're doing it, I don't want to come to practice and it's like, now the whole format is different. I want the same training partner. It's Greg. I don't want you as my training partner today, and then tomorrow it's somebody else. Doesn't work, right?
Mike, you made a lot of sacrifice. You drove from Waco to Dallas almost for a decade. You lived in Waco. A lot of people did not want to be in Waco. I'm sure you did not want to be in Waco.
That's why I was driving from Dallas, because I couldn't live in Waco. I was like, I love Waco, man. I spent 4 years down there in school, but I can't live in Waco full time, man. So yeah, I was driving back and forth Dallas to Waco. I crank up the car, man. My car automatically knew how to get to Waco.
Mike, it is a pleasure to have you on this program. Is there any final thought that you would like to share before you go?
No, I appreciate you having me, man, and best of luck with the program, man. You're doing a great job.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much for stopping by, and I appreciate you as always. May God continue to bless and keep you and your family safe.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming. A lot of times we say we want to achieve greatness, but sometimes we are not willing to make the sacrifice. And when you look at Mike and see the things that he was willing to sacrifice and the things that he gained from sacrificing himself, and when we're talking about sacrificing, we're talking about giving up something, being at practice, eating the things that you don't want to eat, taking your supplements. As he said, one of his major downfall was that he did not want to do the things that would get him to where he wanted to be. He did not like the weight room. He did not like the stretching. But at the end of the day, if you want to be great, then there are things that you must do and there are things that you must give up in order to be great. I thank you all for coming. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do so. I appreciate your support. And as I said before, the intention here is to provide information that can help you to be great. It can help the fans to better understand what it takes. So when they see the athletes struggling, then they too will understand that in order to be the best version of yourself, there are things that you have to do in order to have and in order to be. I thank you all for coming. May God continue to bless and keep you all safe. And again, if you have not subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do so. God bless. Have a blessed day.